Booker uses the screen beautifully and flushes. Devin Booker aggressively attacks the rim. Phoenix Suns, for the first time in 28 years, are going back to the NBA Finals.
Suns in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It wasn't Suns in 4, but you know what? Who cares? It's been 28 years and the Valley Boys are back. Now, what's the significance of the point guard reaching the NBA Finals for the first time? We're going to break that down as well. Love that Photoshop. A huge Game 5 tonight in Milwaukee. Who's going to be playing? What adjustments can the Bucks make? We will break all of that down. So dance like millions of people are watching, Steve Ballmer, or do whatever that was, because the jump starts now.
I want the mask off just so I can see Ballmer's, like, what? That was yelling. I want to see Ballmer's facial expressions there.
He was so happy. It was so much fun to be around. One of the things I say all the time about sports is you get to, like, be there for scheduled joy.
Yes.
Right? You get 20,000 people in an arena all at once that you know.
Or scheduled misery.
Well, yes, either one. But that's pretty cool. All right, welcome to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, joined in here by our NBA champ in LA, Richard Jefferson, our NBA champ in Texas, Kendrick Perkins. We're going to get into the huge Eastern Conference Finals game today, just a little later in the show. But first, I want to talk about the Phoenix Suns, who are headed to the NBA Finals for the first time since Charles Barkley squared off with Michael Jordan in 1993. Chris Paul dropping 41 points in the series-clinching win. Headed to the NBA Finals for the first time in his 16-year career. He was part of a very excited Suns group after the win last night. Take a listen.
That's your journey.
But it's hard to describe it in the moment. You're just grateful for being in these moments with people you're with every single day, and thankful for your family, thankful for, again, the people you work with, thankful for the fans that travel, and to be able to win a game like that is huge for the organization, the city.
I know people say, live in the moment, but that moment was too long, man. That almost felt unreal. I was like, is this too good to be true? I was like, I'm in this for too long now. But, it's life, and we just got to enjoy this night, get back in the lab, and get ready for the finals.
It was so much fun. I just gonna keep saying it. I loved it. I loved just the energy, the joy on the court in that moment. And look, prior to CP3's great performance last night, somebody predicted some of it. Let's take a little listen to what Richard Jefferson had to say.
Do what you've always done. Get everybody involved. Pick your moments, and then come fourth quarter, go be the Chris Paul that you've been all season, that you've been all over your career. That's your moment, because once you've established everybody else, that lane opens up for you to do your work. That should be his formula to go dominate that game.
Aw. And by the way, got every people involved early and then stepped on the gas himself late in the game. Richard, that was lovely. Good.
Well, you know what? I appreciate our producer, Steve, playing that clip, but I really wanted people to see the clip of Kendrick Perkins telling me I was wrong. He was like, you're wrong. If he's going to do that, now look, he got the scowl, started getting all scrunched up over there, everybody, because that's what he said. He said I was wrong. And this is why what was so impressive with Chris Paul, when he's really dominant, when Chris Paul is at his best, he is one of the best fourth quarter finishers. If Chris Paul goes out there and is like, I'm going to try and score 40, it's like, no, Chris, you got to get those guys involved and then go do what you've always done and be one of the most clutch, intense players in the fourth quarter, and he did it perfectly. I'm not saying he listened to me, but maybe he heard me.
Perk, what do you think the significance is of Chris Paul making his first trip to the NBA Finals?
Well, Rachel, I think it's everything, but can I address Richard for a second?
Numbers on the house, Perk, go do it.
Yeah, please, because first of all, look, Richard, you wasn't wrong for us the aspect of Chris Paul taking over the game late, because he did just that, right? But at the beginning of the game, if you were actually watching the game, the Clippers were in the zone. So it wasn't like he was running high pick and roll and dissecting the defense. They actually was punching it into DeAndre Ayton in the paint because the Clippers were small, and it was coming from everybody. It wasn't just Chris Paul.
I literally just said get everyone involved.
Can I finish? The Chris Paul that I witnessed last night, I saw him coming out actually searching for his shot. But I saw Devin Booker, I saw Mikal Bridges, I saw Jay Crowder actually making the emphasis emphasis to get the ball in the middle to DeAndre Ayton, and they got out of the zone in the second half. Now CP3 was bringing Big Cousins up in the high pick and roll and dissecting him. That's how he was able to get downhill. You can fool everybody else with that.
You could answer the question. The significance of Chris Paul's first final appearance.
Like you answered the question.
Yeah,
that's not what we're talking about.
You know what? It was everything. It was everything. You know why? Here's why. Because it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And the fashion that he did it in, I'm going back all the way to the start of this offseason. When he was with the Thunder, right? He had a choice. I'm pretty sure him and Sam Presti sat down. He could have negotiated a buyout. He could have went joined the team like the Lakers or anybody else that were favored as a contender to go and try to chase a ring. No, he didn't shortcut it. He went to the Phoenix Suns where they had a young core, where they drafted players, and he went got it in the trenches. He went got it out the mud. He didn't shortcut the grind. This is why I appreciate this so much more than any other run by any other superstar, because he didn't.
Well, it's interesting when you look at his career and how it maps out, right? We have a list of sort of his accolades, and you can argue who's a quote better player or but you can just look at more accomplished, right? Just look at the actual numbers of his All-NBA selections, his All-Star appearances, his assists career rank, his steals career rank, and this is, again, in the entire NBA history, he is 5th overall. So you can very easily say he is the most accomplished player to have never been in a finals before. And for me, this was amazing, by the way. This was the scene.
Now, guys, this is where I get old man grumpy. You're not done. I understand this. I know I'm not. This is the thing. Giving some
Joy, you are being upset. You want to tamp down.
I'm not. No. I just know that first time my rookie year we went to the finals, this is what it was like. Second time, and we lost. Second time we go to the finals, it's like, no, there's no parties. There's no drinking.
I'm sorry.
What?
So the second time you went to the finals, you weren't like that. You weren't reveling in it. You weren't doing the parties. And what happened, Richard?
I understand we lost, but there's a level of focus. We did better. We did better in the second final.
By less.
We did better. We did better. We're still the greatest Nets team of all time.
Hey, man, let these...
That's a joke.
Let these guys have their moment, man. Let these guys have their moment.
That would worry me. That pseudo parade would worry me if the NBA Finals started tomorrow. But they don't.
They don't.
Eastern Conference Finals are way behind this series, right? They are playing their 5th game tonight, and the score is 2-2. So we know that the Eastern Conference Finals will go to 6 games at least, and then there will be a couple days until the NBA Finals start. So I am okay with them having a nice moment with their fans because they couldn't do it in their own building.
Just stay hungry. That's all I'm saying.
They got 5 more days to stay hungry, if not more.
Stay hungry and grumpy.
We'll do. The only thing I want to say about Chris Paul is this. One of the reasons I have liked covering and watching Chris Paul for his whole career beyond just the magic he does on the court is he's a scrapper, right? He is a smaller guy who has had to get into the NBA and be the point guard that he is by scrapping, by being competitive for every single inch, by working. This was not just God gave him the talent and body to be an NBA star. He put himself in the NBA. And the fact that he showed that same scrappiness, that same determination when a lot of people left him pretty much for dead when he was traded from Houston to Oklahoma City, the bright new shiny light that was shining in Houston with Russell Westbrook and James Harden, and here goes Chris Paul to this sort of NBA rebuilding wasteland, and that's not a knock on Oklahoma City. It's what Oklahoma City has set out to do. It is their intention. People thought, oh, well, okay, he's going to just be hurt a lot, and we know this is the end of Chris Paul's career, and he scrapped his way to the NBA Finals, and I have such admiration for that. I think it's a life. The significance for me of Chris Paul getting to the NBA Finals is the larger life lesson about how it's a long, long life.
Did she answer the question?
And you have opportunities beyond what happens to you in that one moment. As for the Clippers, let's talk about their side of the ball. They reached the conference finals for the first time in franchise history, right? And they did so without Kawhi Leonard since the middle of the second round. Here is Paul George on what he thinks would have happened if Kawhi was healthy.
Oh, we would be going on. This series would have been a lot different. Talk about one of the best players in the league being out, yet we were, inches, away from getting to the next round. So definitely it's a what if.
So, Perk, I want to just say he was asked the question. He didn't start this on his own. He was asked, how would things be different if Kawhi had been there? So, please, what do you think of that response?
Well, I mean, he's supposed to say that, but at the end of the day, didn't the Clippers just beat the Utah Jazz, the #1 seed, the team that had the overall best record in the NBA, one of the dark horses that could have came out of the Western Conference? So you got to, without Kawhi, I mean, I know
Well,
Kawhi
he played half of
hurt.
that series, so they did have him for a couple of those wins.
That's what I'm saying, but we could say, I mean, the Phoenix Suns didn't have Chris Paul at the first 2 games of the series. They could have capitalized on that moment. The Clippers could have, but they didn't. So then, look, we're not about to sit up here and do this at all. And I get it. Paul George was asked the question, but he had a chance to seize the moment. He had a chance to go up on this series. And by the way, Chris Paul just got back into rap form last night. He was in COVID protocol. He had COVID. And Rachel, you covered a lot of people that dealt with COVID, from Jason Tatum to Dennis Schroeder to a lot of people that said, sometimes we just don't feel right. And at the end of the day, I just feel like Paul George and the Clippers missed a golden opportunity while CP3 was out to capitalize and take full control over this series. So I don't know if Kawhi was healthy that the Clippers would have beat Phoenix in this series.
And again, like Perk said, I believe that he believes this. And you know what? There's probably 5 or 6 other teams that believe if they were healthy, let's say the Brooklyn Nets, maybe the Los Angeles Lakers. There's a lot of teams that believe if they were 100% healthy, that their approach and the way the finals are, the way this postseason would have played out would be completely different. I do like his approach. Unfortunately, inside the basketball community, you're looking back at some last year's past success. This was last year's past failures. This year was all about what Paul George was able to do. Paul George was able to elevate himself to be like, okay, that's one of the top 10 players in the league. You can see it. He's doing it night in, night out. He's doing it. So there was positivity gain. Do I think that they would be in the finals without Kawhi, or if they had Kawhi? They gave him more room for error, because don't forget, they were 2 free throws away from most likely being having 3 wins. That's what I'm saying. There were multiple mistakes away, but when you have great players, it gives you more room for error. That was the only thing I picked up on that. But at the end of the day, I ain't gonna question Paul George.
And by the way, that was his point a little bit about we were inches away. That's what he was talking about, was that game 2 in Phoenix. And look, in the micro for Paul George, these playoffs without Kawhi, the section without Kawhi, actually lifted him up.
Yes, it did.
He lifted his game. He elevated, as you said, Richard, and it lifted everyone else's opinion of him along with it. I do know that Paul George would trade all of that for having Kawhi by his side and feeling like he had a better chance to reach the finals himself. It is kind of what he's supposed to say, though. All right, coming up, the NCAA's USA basketball managing director, Jerry Colangelo, told ESPN's Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin yesterday he doesn't expect LeBron to play for Team USA anymore. Colangelo said he put in his time, he made a contribution that is appreciated, but I think his time is over. Perk, is this what you expected at age 36 for LeBron?
I mean, I don't. Look, it's over with. At the end of the day, we already know that LeBron James is the ultimate family man. He wants to be at Bronny AAU games. He wants to be watching Bryce. He has nothing to prove. And if we want to continue to see LeBron James play NBA basketball, then I would consider him missing the Olympics.
Now, Olympics, yes, because the next Olympics is probably in 4 years. But I love our 3 years. I love Jerry Colangelo. He was one of the original owners of the Phoenix Suns. I grew up with him and them. But I'll say this, Jerry, it's not up to you. It's not up to you, Jerry. It's up to Bron.
You think just general Team USA, though?
Bron will let Bron drive by and then point it.
I want to get to this tweet. Patrick just tweeted this recently. He says, CP3, emotions got the best of me last night. Night, gang? I'm sorry, I thought that's a game, but it does not. My bad, wasn't meant for you.
Who was he aiming for?
Congrats on making it to the finals. Best of luck.
Who was in that for?
No, but Patrick Beverley's one of those guys that's always like, you hate to play against him, but you would love him on your team.
Yes.
I would say this, that moment, if you were on my team, I would look at you differently. We can't do that. That's not in the game. That's not cool. I love the agitator. I don't like it when you do too much, but I like the agitator. But in that moment, I'm glad he apologized. Pat Beverley is a person, as an agitator, has a ton of respect in this league. But once you go that way, that's more of a sucker move than it is anything.
it's a coward move. And look, if you're going to dish it out, then you got to be able to take it. I was the guy that was banging down low. I used to throw elbows, and I got elbows thrown back at me. And look, this is part of it, but I just can't. I lost a lot of respect for Pat Bev after that play because he seemed like a kid that had been playing in the park and had been getting whooped for taking a beating, and then all of a sudden he wanted to just pick a fight because he couldn't play no more. He couldn't stop CP3. This is not his emotions. Like talking about, he was talking about it wasn't meant for you. Who was it meant for?
Well, and the last thing I'll say is this, is that, Pat, the reason why I think I'm probably looking at you differently is because if a fight broke out, if somebody turns around and does something, because what you did that could warrant an actual that could warrant, and then all of a sudden the Phoenix Suns, as you're congratulating them and saying the emotions got the best of them, you could have affected their chance to win the title because guys started throwing punches or went back at you.
Does anyone know about that in Phoenix?
I'm just saying, Phoenix has had that moment before. Sorry about the hip check, Robert Horry.
I will say this. I believe it was Jay Crowder who, after the game, said of that moment, he says, "That's when we knew we broke them." There you go. Let's move on to some big news from the NCAA. According to our ESPN story from Dan Murphy, for the first time, all NCAA athletes are now able to make money from a wide variety of business ventures without losing their eligibility. NCAA athletes will be able to accept money from businesses in exchange for allowing the business to feature them in advertisement or products. Athletes also will be allowed to use their own status as a college athlete to promote their own public appearances or companies for the first time. So, Richard, you were a prominent student athlete. I don't know if the quotes are around prominent or students or athlete.
My soul.
So, react.
Okay. One, let's establish this. Give Reggie Bush back his Heisman.
Amen.
Let's reinstate all the stuff with that Fab Five.
Right?
And there's probably a list. Why? Because the damn Supreme Court of the United States of America basically told you what you were doing was BS. So all these penalties, all of this disgrace that you put on these kids, let's take some of that back. Let's reinstate that. Because you know what you're looking for right now, NCAA? You're looking for some positivity. You're looking for some positivity and just giving the kids what they rightfully deserve. How about reinstating some people that lost some things, that had to face embarrassment because you guys were enforcing rules that the Supreme Court decided? Now, this is my biggest concern. They spent so much time fighting it, and they were so arrogant, they could have just given them laptops. They wanted to go one more step. That's for another time. The one thing I will say is this. Now they're going to have to be reactionary. They're now scrambling, trying to figure out the rules and the systems and all that stuff. They could have been working on this for years. So good luck, NCAA.
Look, I'm going to go another route and say it's about time, right? Watching all these college coaches get $90 to $100 million deals, getting signed to lifetime deals. And look, it's off the backs of these athletes. These athletes are the ones that's out there, that's the product that's out there producing. So I'm happy that they have a chance to actually make some money. But you know what this also goes to show me is that the NCAA feels threatened. And I'm especially in the basketball world, because we're seeing guys like Jalen Green go and make $500,000 and not going to college that went to the G League. We're seeing the overtime league that's starting up, that's allowing high school players to go to another form of professional league where they get paid and still be able to go to the draft. And what we're witnessing right now is that Jalen Green is still going to be a high lottery pick, and he didn't go to college. He ended up going to make $500,000. So in my opinion, they feel threatened. They hear the footsteps coming, and what they're trying to do is make sure that they're able to keep 5-star and 4-star recruits interested in coming to college.
Well, look, they felt threatened, and guess what? Their hands still had to be forced. It's not like they did this on their own. I mean, I know that there were some steps that they had started to take, but come on. All right, Perk and Richard, hold on. Stick around. We're going to talk about the Eastern Conference Finals a little later in the show. We will bring you back for that. However, we have a couple.
Young is out.
And Giannis is grabbing toward his left knee area.
Oh my, the Eastern Conference Finals may see a gigantic turning point here.
We got to do the little things. We got to turn their pressure against them.
Keeping that pressure on these guys for 48 minutes.
Here's Williams for three. Floats it to the rim, turns and flushes.
We just need to settle in a little bit.
Open three. That's good. It's a 20-point Atlanta lead. Oh my, it's Atlanta's night.
It was one of those nights. Everybody played with confidence.
We were super confident, man. That's what it's all about.
Welcome back to The Jump. I am now joined by the 2021 Hall of Fame inductee, Chris Bosh, and our senior writer, not in the Hall of Fame, but maybe one day, Zach, the host of the Low Post podcast, Zach Lowe. All right, guys, the Bucks have announced that Giannis Antetokounmpo is out for tonight. But, Zach, yesterday you had some reporting on Giannis. Please tell us what you know.
Yeah, he appears to have avoided serious knee injury. The ligaments appear mostly okay or totally okay. It's unclear now exactly what the condition of the knee is. They're being a little, as you can understand, secretive about the information, but they're very, very relieved inside the Bucks today that the worst has not happened. The knee appears structurally sound, and beyond that, we'll see about a timetable. But the number one emotion right now in Milwaukee is, relief.
All right, well, Chris, you suffered a similar injury in your career. Yesterday, you weren't sure if Giannis would be back in these playoffs at all. Now that you've heard that there's no ligament damage, is there still anything about this particular injury that makes you be like, I don't know? What do you think?
Well, I mean, we just saw the highlight. It was a pretty incredible injury, and I'm so happy that he isn't seriously hurt. But one of the things that you have to deal with is those stretched ligaments. They might be bruised. They're probably not torn, but they might be bruised. And most of all, the bone bruising. That's one of the things that I had the most trouble with. It gives you the most pain because, as you can see, when he kind of hyperextends that knee, those two bones on the other side, on the sides of your kneecap, well, they bang together and they bruise. And so that's where you're going to get most of your pain. That's probably going to prohibit him from being able to be explosive and even get up and down the court.
What do you think? Look, I was going to ask Zach's opinion on that, but you have not had that knee injury, so I'm just going to go. Zach, given that and given sort of where they hang in the balance right now, is there a point where you feel like Giannis has to come back to make this a competitive series for the Bucks, or do you feel like if he cannot play the rest of this series, or maybe even beyond that, as Chris is concerned with, how far do you think the Bucks can go?
I think they can win this series without him, and that's different, Atlanta fans, than saying they will win this series without him. But the Hawks just proved last game you can lose your best player. All these other guys are good NBA players. They can step up. You can kind of take on a different look and ride that for a game or two. They still have Chris Middleton. They still have Drew Holiday. They have home court advantage. I would give them a better than 50-50 chance of winning the series, even if he doesn't come back. And we'll see what happens in terms of his injury. I mean, this is one of those things where he's in the prime of his career. Chris can tell you, you only get so many shots at it in your prime or ever in your career. But you can't jeopardize your long-term health, right?
Well, Chris had a stretch where he got a ton of shots at it, but that's a whole different subject. I want to get over to the Western Conference on their side. The Clippers lost last night, of course, and Marcus Morris said afterward, he is confident Kawhi Leonard is coming back to LA next season. Chris, reminder here, Kawhi has an opt-out in his contract. It's a player option. Now, even if he exercises that option, it could just be to get a different contract. He could stay with the Clippers even if he exercises this option. Do you expect him to be back in that LA Clipper uniform next season?
I expect them to. They have a fantastic team. It's the reason why he was there. They orchestrated trying to put this team together, and you don't just give up after 2 years. And I'm sure Kawhi feels, as Paul George said last night, they have supreme confidence that if he would have been healthy, they would be going to the hopefully to the finals right now. But, I think with the pieces that they have, bringing Kawhi back, having Morris, having playoff P, I think, you give yourself the best chance just coming back, running it back, making sure you get that team as best as, in a better position. Hopefully pick up a couple pieces, maybe a couple second-round draft picks, and run it back. I mean, they were so close, but just more importantly, just to see, for everyone to see Paul George elevate his game to what we thought and what we know he can do. I'm sure that's pretty promising for the organization. I'm pretty sure it's promising for Kawhi. And hey, let's be frank, we can look at other teams, but they have a pretty good situation going there. You run it back.
Zach?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say this. I mean, I'll try to prove a positive by stating a negative. I haven't heard one thing of concern or indication that Kawhi Leonard is leaving LA. Now, it's not like I'm tied into Kawhi's camp, But from any team in the league, I have not heard an iota of worry, anxiety that he's leaving the Clippers. And I agree with Chris. The Clippers, look, they didn't make the finals, but they at least quieted the noise. Next season, there's not going to be this drumbeat of what if they fail? What if they fail? What if Paul George fails? What if we get way off P and pandemic P again? They got to the conference finals. They didn't win, but they got there. And they got there in tough fashion, winning twice against Utah without Kawhi. I think they could go into next season with a cleaner slate, a calmer environment around them, and say, you know what? We might have it. We found something in Terrence Mann, and we might get Ibaka back if we resign him. We'll see what happens with Jackson and Batum. But we've got something going here, and we can kind of go into it with a little bit of more calm around us.
I would expect Reggie Jackson to stay in that Clippers uniform. He had a great quote last night. He said he walked into the locker room and told the guys, "Thank you for saving me." Just really emotional there. You could see he had been crying from the redness in his eyes, and seeing the bond between Reggie and Paul George, who have been friends for a decade and consider each other some of their best friends in basketball. That bond really translated out onto the court, and I expect him to stick around as well. All right, guys, stick with us, because coming up, we're going to talk about how. All right, so the Warriors own 2 lottery picks with the number 7 and 14 in this year's draft. It's not often an NBA team in that situation can call itself a championship contender like the Warriors are. Zach, how should Golden State approach this draft in terms of trading or making the picks?
Well, Steph Curry reminded everyone, I'm still Steph Curry. I'm still the guy. And Klay Thompson is coming back, and I think it behooves you to say we got to win right now. We owe it to Steph Curry to try to win right now. So that means you look around. What can I get for 7, 14, Wiseman if it gets to that? The problem is I'm not sure what veteran is out there for them, and if they can't find anything, guess what you do? Take players who are young but might be able to play in a finals game next year.
What do you think, Chris?
I think this is the dream position if you're an organization and a GM. They've got high picks. I truly believe in Wiseman. All he has to do is set screens for Klay and Steph and roll, and he'll be open all next season. They have a very dynamic group of young players. They just have to really enjoy the situation that they're in right now. I would say that they need to upgrade on the wings for that 3 and D position. But if they can find someone in the draft to fit that, great. If they can package it up, they're in the driver's seat.
I'm definitely on Steph timeline watch as opposed to development watch. That's just my personal opinion. Let's start with you. Are those fair expectations?
They're fair expectations, but, it's not going to be that easy. You think the East is easy, but who in the top 8 is like a guarantee to fall out next season? Nobody. You got Chicago, they're going for it. Charlotte, they're going for it. Toronto has the number 4 pick. We'll see what happens with Kyle Lowry. But you don't look at the East as like, it's just a cakewalk for the Pacers, as talented as they are. And they are talented. And Rick Carlisle's a great coach. It's not like a no-brainer for them to be in the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I think, they're definitely going to have be more on the up and up this year, especially with Carlisle coming back. He's has his own history, different hairdo back in the day, but he definitely brought a lot of wins to the Pacers. But, I'm sure that the Indiana fans are going to be super excited. They do have a great fan base. They have some great talent, and they're just going to have to build around that guy right there. They're going to make sure that, they compete. And just like everyone says, if you're in the East, you have a little bit better of a shot. So they can probably put some things together. Look for them to be active in the trade market as well, because I believe they have some assets. And really just, lead. Rick Carlisle will lead them the way that a champion leads his team, and we'll see what happens for him.
I was trying to jog my memory. The George Steinbrenner, Billy Martin, right? Am I thinking of the coach, the manager that just kept coming back and coming back and coming back to the Yankees? That's what I think of when I see that old Rick Carlisle footage there. All right, what's that? Because I hear the coaching carousel still. Here it is, coming around again. Let's take a look at the vacancies still remaining. Still a handful, including for the Wizards after Scott Brooks' departure. Bradley Beal entering a contract year. That's important. Russ coming off a very strong second half of the season. So, Chris, how involved should the Wizards duo be in that coaching search? How involved should the Wizards involve these guys? Involved, like that.
Well, in any time. Right, it's a delicate subject sometimes. You kind of do have to, in my opinion, get some sort of direction from your players, because I think that the Wizards have what it takes to really compete for a championship. I don't think it's any question that with Russ and with Bradley that they have tremendous talent. I think they need a head coach to come in there and really perform right away. And you want their attitudes good coming into training camp. You want their confidence. And I think sometimes, their recommendation and their voices, I think they should be heard. They can put themselves in a very strong position, really, like I said before, to compete for a championship. In my mind, they're right there.
If the Wizards front office is watching this and they just heard Chris Bosh say they can compete for a championship next year, they're like, whoa, next year? We're going to compete for a championship next year?
Does Chris want to come play?
Look, the answer is Bradley Beal should be, particularly Bradley Beal. If you want to keep him, he should be as involved as he wants to be. Some stars, they don't really want to be a part of the coaching process. They don't want that to be on them if it goes badly. They don't want to feel like they're responsible for whatever happens afterwards. Some stars really want to be. Depending on what Bradley Beal wants, he should be as involved as he would like to be because he's that important to the Wizards organization. He's the franchise guy. He's the guy who's got one guaranteed year left on his deal, I believe. He's the one that they're dying to keep there long term. So whatever he wants, that's what they should do.
And look, to your point of some guys don't want that responsibility. If a guy does take that responsibility on, they're kind of invested in the choice then. And then if a few months down the road things aren't going great, management can say, well, you wanted this guy. Like, make it work. We can't just, throw out a new guy again. So I think that teams now are understanding why that investment is valuable. But again, Bradley Beal, contract year. Who knows what the Wizards are going to be doing at the middle point of next season as that trade deadline approaches, and whether Brad Beal will say what he has said many, many times, which is, I wanted to stay in D.C., I don't want to be traded, or if things change by then. There's a lot of teams around the league who would like to put Bradley Beal in their trade machines. So we will see. Zach, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. You will be back later in these playoffs.
Richard Jefferson, that people want to watch Trae Young play the game of basketball than Giannis. He's more electrifying.
I think
He's
they want to watch
exciting.
him. I don't know if it's more than Giannis, but yes, he is electrifying and exciting for sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead and correct him.
He's more fun to watch than Giannis. No, and if you're going to sit up here and debate me and tell me anything else differently, we're tripping.
I would never debate you, Perk. I know better. Come on. I can't throw out all of those phrases you do. I would lose in a heartbeat. Come on. I do want to ask you about the next jump ball, though.
Yeah,
okay?
can we get the next?
We got to move on.
Please.
I'm just saying you're right, Perk, and I'm moving on. That's it. I can't stand up to the withering Perkisms. I can't do it. Richard, maybe I can't do it.
Don't try.
Let's talk about Chris Middleton showing up. Is it going to be red hot Game 3 Chris Middleton or Game 4 Chris Middleton? What do you got, Rich? We'll start with you.
Well, this is my thing. I find it so disrespectful and I find it so inappropriate that you would sit up here and ask me a question that Chris Middleton doesn't even know. Chris Middleton doesn't even know which one's going to show up.
I can't Bucks fans
don't know which one's going to show up. I don't know. Perk's going to say something he don't know. If Chris Middleton don't know which one's going to show up, how can I sit up here and tell you guys I think this Chris Middleton's going to show up? This was the fun thing about it. We're all going to watch and find out. Chris is going to play and find out.
I think the Game 3 Chris Middleton is going to show up, and he showed us that last year in the bubble against the Heat when Giannis was injured. Look, Mike Budenholzer is going to put him in position to be successful. One thing I will say is don't allow him to run high pick and rolls because it's a disaster. I would ISO him at that wing area, feature him on the low block, having them come off of pin downs, off of Brook Lopez, things of that nature. Look, the whole offense is going to switch up because Giannis is out.
Well, I want to get to the last jump ball before we go. Kendrick, who takes Game 5, Hawks or Bucks?
Bucks.
What about you, Richard?
Bucks.